Well, the National Disability Insurance Scheme has been under some intense scrutiny for a number of years now. Taxpayers are forking out billions and billions of dollars every year to keep the under-fire system above water. The Minister in charge, Bill Shorten, is doing his best to defend it, but he's going to find it hard to back this latest revelation. One of Australia's worst serial sex offenders is set to be freed from custody with the help of an NDIS support package. Wayne Wilmot was involved in the 1980s abduction, assault and murder of 20-year-old Janine Boulding. The court found he did not take part in the murder, but he was convicted of kidnapping and assaulting the bank worker. Wilmot was released on parole in 1996, but attacked another 4 women before he was imprisoned again in 1998. This dangerous criminal, who's now aged in his 50s, has psychopathic traits and poses a, quote, significant risk of reoffending. But he's been given help with his impending release. The New South Wales Supreme Court has heard he's obtained NDIS support, which includes 8 hours of help each week with daily life, as well as 16 hours of weekly help with economic and community participation. According to the Australian newspaper, past treatment and rehabilitation efforts have had no meaningful gains on Wayne Wilmot because he has been resistant to accepting help. Michael Sukkar is the Shadow Minister for the NDIS and Housing, and I'm pleased to say he joins me on the line. Michael, good morning to you.
Good morning, Mark.
Well, this is a complete kick in the guts. I mean, the NDIS is already costing a bomb. Then we find out taxpayers are supporting convicted sex offenders.
Yeah, Mark, look, we are very concerned about this. And in fact, the succession of stories that are now coming to light in relation to really serious criminals who are accessing the NDIS flows from a range of questions that we asked the National Disability Insurance Agency during Senate estimates, and they conceded that there were at least 2,500 NDIS participants with interactions with the justice system. Now, that won't mean that they're all rapists and murderers, but there are many cases of individuals, and in fact, a case recently that we highlighted on a current affair showed a convicted rapist who was using his NDIS package under a self-managed plan to procure female care workers. And I can assure you he wasn't procuring them for their skills in caring for him. He was, in a very predatory way, trying to use it to meet women. Now, we have repeatedly asked the agency and flagged with the Minister what on earth are the protections for these workers, because really here, Mark, there are two main points. Firstly, should taxpayers, to begin with, be spending billions of dollars on individuals like this? Now, I think we all accept that everybody gets access to our health system and everybody gets access to these to some extent, medical and other supports. But secondly, what are also the protections for the workers in the system who may be procured by people like this under self-managed plans? They're clearly marked. The first thing the Minister could do is come out immediately and say, we are not going to allow individuals who fall within this category to manage their own plan and therefore be interacting directly with workers in the system who won't be offered the same sort of protections that, for example, would be offered to medical staff in a hospital setting or in a formal setting.
That's what worries me, Michael. And I use this Wayne Wilmot example today as the prime example. I mean, he's set to be supported by the NDIS. He's obtained NDIS support for 24 hours of help each week, 8 hours of support for daily activities, 16 hours with economic and community participation. That's not the sort of person who should be reaping the benefits of the scheme. And what sort of protections are there for those who are going to come in contact with a notorious criminal?
Well, I think it highlights also, Mark, that the scheme has gone a lot further than I think many Australians felt they signed up for. Obviously, the NDIS has had bipartisan support. We grew the scheme in government as a coalition from its inception to about 500,000 participants. But I think Australians have seen now, particularly over the last 2 years, Bill Shorten came to government basically saying the Liberals keep talking about the sustainability of the scheme. These terrible Liberals keep talking about having to rein the scheme in. I'm telling you, there's nothing wrong with the scheme. And he's really administered the portfolio just like that because things are going from bad to worse.
Well, just on that, let me highlight another one, Michael. Yesterday we spoke about a convicted sex offender, to back up your point, who's receiving top-level NDIS funding support. His package is worth $1.4 million. So if you break that down, that works out to be $3,835 in funding per day. Surely there's no way to justify that.
Well, I don't think there is, and again, we ask repeatedly questions of the minister, particularly on these very large plans, and he seems unwilling or incapable of even addressing them, let alone dealing with them. And as I said, as a minister, if it comes to light that convicted rapists, for example, sex offenders, other very serious offenders, are accessing the scheme under self-managed plans, you would move swiftly on the same day and change that and put in place protocols to make sure that we're protecting the workers in the system. And that's quite separate from really looking at the composition of the scheme and the quantum of support that it's providing individuals like this. Is it affordable? Is it using taxpayers' dollars as was intended? And I think, frankly, Mark, it does the scheme a great disservice because Australians shake their head at it, and I think it diminishes trust that they have in the NDIS, and that trust has gone through the floor under Bill Shorten, and it's a great disappointment.
All right. Well, like you, I'm concerned by what might happen to some of the carers. Like, I mean, for instance, with this Wilmot, released on parole in 96, attacked another 4 women. He was imprisoned again. Who's responsible if something goes wrong? I think that's the question that Bill Shorten, the minister, needs to answer, and why these convicted sex offenders are being given so much money as far as funding support goes from the NDIS. Michael, keep up the fight, and hopefully we'll see something happen sooner rather than later, because I think most people listening will be gripping onto the steering wheel saying, how the bloody hell does this happen? You're a good man. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Mark.
That's Michael Sukkar, Shadow Minister for NDIS and Housing. Can you believe that? It is just unbelievable. I'll repeat, a sex offender who's receiving top-level funding, $1.4 million, $3,835 in funding per day. Then you've got this Wayne Wilmot involved in the abduction of Janine Boulding, the 20-year-old nurse. He's going to be released with the support of the NDIS, 8 hours of support for daily activities, 16 hours with economic and community participation. Ask yourself this question. If you work in the National Disability Insurance Scheme, would you want to go and knock on the door of Wayne Wilmot, given his track record and past and his convictions? Leave me out of that. Maybe Bill Shorten can go and knock on his door and sit down and find out whether or not he wants to be a law-abiding citizen. Fair dinkum.
If you've got a news tip, email ben@2gb.com.